I will leave the class to Jay. You can call me up if there's a problem. Okay. And before I leave, let me thank Jay beforehand for all the sessions that he's done so nicely. I don't want to leave without thanking him. Okay. Bye-bye.
Hey, well, thank you, Jerry. You going to stay for a while? No, I guess not. He's gone. So now I can tell you all the secrets about experiencing Kabbalah that we didn't want Jerry to hear, right? Okay. That's what this class is about today. I have the gallery view on, which is nice because I like to be able to see everyone. So if you would like, I'd appreciate if people turned on their pictures so I can see more people here, and not just names. But that's up to you. Hi, Leslie. Good to have you. Great. So as I'm talking now, am I being pinged or highlighted? Or if only if you're on speaker? So you have a choice. You can have see speaker or see everybody. And okay. And the person who's speaking is generally put by Zoom in the top left corner. So if you're wondering who's speaking, just look up to the top left corner, but not always. If not, then it's the person who's highlighted that's speaking. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick review of what we've covered, and then cover the full spectrum of Jewish holidays and rituals, starting with Jewish prayer, and to really give you a sense of avenues for experiencing Kabbalah. And again, hold questions until the end, or put them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them at the end and answer everybody's questions. So I'm going to pull up to start the handout and do share screen. There we go. And okay, did that work? Is it pulled up?
Yes, it is up.
For some reason, the there we go. Turn that off. Okay, so this is a little different depiction of the Tree of Life, a little bit simpler in some regards. As I mentioned last week, the 10 Svirot are the channels of emanation into us, the channels of receiving. You can look at them either way. There's aspects of God flowing into us, or aspects of our being able to receive God. And each one of these 10 have a cluster of meanings, which is why I tend to use the Hebrew words instead of calling Chokhmah wisdom, which it primarily is, but it's more than wisdom. I like to refer to it as Chokhmah, and Bina as Bina, rather than as intelligence or understanding. And Chesed is so many meanings in there, as well as kindness and empathy. It's expansiveness and conscience, and so over time, as a student of Kabbalah, you'll get used to that, and just think naturally about all of the various meanings. That becomes important in what we're going to get into today, in the counting of the Omer between Passover and Shavuos, 49 days. It really helps to have the full sense, or have a chart like this in front of you, but to have really a full sense of the whole cluster of meanings. as you combine two sfirot every day of the 7 lower sfirot. So you have a total of 49 pairings. And then think about all of those meanings of each of those 2 pairs. It's particularly important. It really enhances the experience. Another time which is really a ritual of receiving, is waving of the lulav and the etrog on Sukkot, because Sukkot is a holiday immediately following Yom Kippur. The first thing we do is we build something, a temporary hut. So it's really an opportunity to be a co-creator with God right from the start of the year. And in the sukkah, we take the lulav and the etrog, we bring them together, we wave them in 6 directions, and each of those 6 directions bring in all of the sfirot. So it's a wonderful meditative exercise that just like observing Shabbat, it becomes meaningful as you do it. And you can do that in a community sukkah or in your own sukkah, which is nice to create your own space, build your own sukkah, and every day go in and celebrate the coupling of these sfirot and draw them in. You face east, so you wave in from the east, Tiferet, because your Tiferet is east. The symbol of Tiferet is east, and to the right is Chesed, to the south, and to the southeast, right, is Chokhmah, and to the southwest is Netzach. So I like to do 3 wavings, 1 for each, and feel them coming in. And to the left is Gevurah, which is power and coalescence as a people, as families. And Bina is to the right of that, which is to the northeast. Hod is to the northwest. And turning around, Yesod is to the west. So what's up and down? Well, up is Keter and down is Malchut. So you cover that way all 6 directions. A part of the custom, very Kabbalistic, is you take the lulav in the left hand, which represents Bina and all of the left side, and you take the lulav, which includes not only the palm, but the willow and the myrtle. And together they represent the right side, and the palm can represent the central column too, but you're bringing the 2 together. You're actually physically bringing the world together into oneness. And the stem is down when you say the blessing. After you say the blessing, you turn it around, and then the sprockets are open, the gates are open, and you're ready to wave 3 times and bring in the flow. So I got a little bit ahead of myself there. So one of another aspect of the review from last week, we talked about the symbolism, that the sfirot are not only a cluster of meanings, but a cluster of symbols. And there's some 20 major categories, and then lots that just don't seem to fit into any. So the handout I gave you that you have is the product of years and years of research and study, and some are in two categories, some symbols. That's because some Kabbalists interpret the Zohar, a particular passage, as talking about one sphira, like Bina, and another says, oh no, that's about Malchut. So there's no consensus, in other words, among rabbis or among scholars. But this is a best attempt at the most common associations. So I wanted to take a look at the names of God, because what I want to do next is go through a few prayers and reinterpret them Kabbalistically to give you an idea of the depth behind the literal translation. And it's hard, it's a particular barrier in Judaism if you don't understand Hebrew. And that's enhanced if you don't, in terms of Kabbalistic meaning. But so we'll go through a couple of prayers, and you start to get the sense. And that's one of the things we do in the advanced class, is study a particular prayer every week, or part of a prayer. Last week it was B'zot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe, that we say when you lift the Torah and point. But so I'll be alluding to some of these as we go through the prayers. But Echia, I will be, is the name associated with Keter. Hamakom is Tiferet. Yah is Chochmah. Adonai Eloheinu, or Adonai Elohim, together is Bina. El is Chesed. It's the short name of God. El Elohim, sort of a generic name of God. Ha-Elohim is sort of a God with a small g, is Gevura, and also Din. Yud Hey Vav Hey, the holy name, standing alone, is Tiferet. And I just moved Hamakom down here as a correction on this, but I'd already circulated this. And Adonai Tzvaot and Elohim Tzvaot together are Netzach and Hod, principles and emotions. El Shaddai, or just Shaddai, is Yesod, and so is El Chai, the God of life. Shaddai means my breast. The two aspects of Yesod. And the name Adonai, meaning Lord, is Malchut, not to be confused with Yud Hey Vav Hey, the holy name that we can't pronounce, and we call Adonai or Hashem, which is Tiferet. And Shekhinah is Malchut. So you have a male and a female aspect to Malchut. Shekhinah is that aspect of feeling God's presence that we can unite with Tiferet in the middle of the tree. Here, remember? And we create holiness. We create oneness within ourselves. Shabbat, that's what the Kiddush does, and creates an extra soul of unity for the entire period of a holiday. But Adonai, the male, is the emanator aspect of any of these sphirot. So in other words, we receive, and then we become godlike in our partnership with God and emanate these potencies, our intelligence, our wisdom, our sense of harmony into the world. And that's the meaning of Adonai. Okay. So I'm sure there are no questions on that. So we'll move on to actually taking a look at this is the Ne'ilah service. This is a mystical aspect that very few people understand. Why at the end of the last service, Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur, you actually become born again. This is the born again ritual of Judaism. You're born with a new clean soul, a clean slate, and the ritual is that you say the Shema once and the Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Le'olam Va'ed 3 times, and Adonai Hu Elohim. You say, whoops, trying to make it bigger. There we go. You say 7 times. Well, the 7 is easy. That's the lower 7 sfirot, right? From Chesed on down. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. So the opportunity is to close your eyes and feel the flow as the congregation recites each of those. And Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed, all of the 3s bring you up through the 4 levels, the 4 worlds as they're called. Remember, we had the world of creation partnering, holiness, ethics, and revelation. So the first time you recite, you come up from creation partnering to holiness, then from holiness to ethics, then from ethics to revelation. And on Tu B'Shvat, we eat 3 kinds of fruit. And with each ceremonial eating in a Tu B'Shvat Seder, you're brought up 1 level higher. It brings you up from the world of creation partnering, which is Malchut, to the world of holiness, here in the middle, Netzach Hod Yesod, to ethics, which is Tiferet, Gevurah, and Chesed, and then finally to the world of Chochmah and Bina. The first kind of fruit is fruit that, like the pineapple or a coconut, that you've got to break into, or you need a nutcracker to break through the inedible shells. You're opening the gates for creation partnering. And the flow starts. The second level is, so you've moved up to holiness. And at each of these levels, you have 1 glass of wine. It starts with white, and you keep adding red, becomes more and more red. Well, white is Chesed, and red is Gevurah. So you're starting with Gevurah. Starting with Chesed. All Chesed may be a drop of Gevurah in the Chesed, but you can't create without some Gevurah. Then the second, when you reach holiness, after the first tasting, then it's more rosé, maybe 1/3, 2/3. You've added more red to the white. And when you've reached the world of ethics, after the next tasting, then you add more red. And finally, it's almost all red when you get up to the top of Revelation. So you can think in your mind about all the opportunities of meditation in this practice as you're moving up through the levels, through the worlds. And down here, I have the Seder. Here is the Seder. Okay, so let me go back here. So the four worlds become important, particularly in certain certain holidays. That idea of rising up through the four worlds and drawing down the shefa, the flow, the influence through the four worlds and into ourselves, meditating at each level. So those are the three levels. And the Shema we say once. So what does the Shema mean? I touched upon this last week, but after the class ended, and I want to go a little greater depth into that. So the third page of your handout here is the Ne'ilah. And what's been lost in Judaism in the Middle Ages was the focus on the Shema. And instead, the focus became on the Echad, to differentiate ourselves from the nations, from the Christians in particular, that had three gods. We have one God. Kabbalistically speaking, that doesn't make sense. The Echad is unity, is oneness, is bringing all of the Sefirot together in Tiferet. Oneness is holiness. And the Shema is listen, is the same as hearing, as the same as receiving. Hearing is the same as receiving. It's one way of receiving. Seeing is another. Smelling is another. All of our tastes can bring in the shefa. But in Judaism, hearing is particularly important. Sound, music, the shofar blasts on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are hearing meditation. You can cover yourself with your tallis and close your eyes and feel the flow through the sound of the tekiah. And in fact, this service ends with a tekiah gadola, a long blast, single blast. Should be long enough for you to focus on each of the 10 sefirot and feel them coming through the respective parts of the body that are associated with each of the 10 sefirot, which are summarized here, parts of the body. And it hopefully can add a lot of meaning to hearing the shofar. So Shema, hear, that's key. And that was entered into the service by, it's believed to be the men of the Great Assembly back in the 4th century when Torah readings were introduced. And this prayer was chosen, and that wasn't a prayer, this was a line from Deuteronomy, that is the second parsha of Deuteronomy, that introduces the idea of Shema. And there's this beautiful piece of literature in the way that's written, in the mixing of the word shamar, which is observe. Observe these commandments, Moses says. And at the same time, he says, now listen to what I have to say. Listen, listen. And finally brings it together in listen, Israel. Listen through your malchut of Israel. Adonai Eloheinu. Adonai Eloheinu is Bina, is your Tiferet, is your Adonai. Your Tiferet is oneness. You see the levels of meaning in that when you translate this by the sefirot that are symbolized here. Shema, open yourself up to receive the shefa. Israel, us. Adonai, another way to read this is Tiferet is your gevura, Adonai Eloheinu. Tiferet is oneness. You could translate it either way. Bina is your Tiferet, and your Tiferet is oneness, harmony, holiness. The Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed, which is, according to the Zohar, the part of the Shema where Netzach and Hod accompany the Shekhinah up from Malchut up to become unified with Tiferet through the words of this prayer. But Baruch, bless, and blessing Baruch Atah Adonai is another way to open the gates. By blessing God, we open the gates and God blesses us. Another insight of Kabbalah, otherwise the idea of blessing God doesn't make any sense, right? But in Kabbalah it does. We're opening up to receive blessings. Baruch Shem Kavod, the name of Kavod, of glory of God. Glory is another synonym for Shefa, another allusion to flow itself.
I know, but wear this so that people can see you.
Could you put yourself on mute, please, whoever is speaking? Okay, thanks. Baruch Shem Kavod, the Tiferet of the flow of to Malchuto, to his Malchut, to his sovereignty, which is Malchut, our ability to feel God's presence. The Olam Va'ed, forever and ever. So again, this is 3 times. Well, 3 times allows us to move up through the Sfirot, up to the top. So by the time you repeated that 3 times in the Ne'ilah, if you're a true Kabbalist, you feel totally one and united and totally balanced and totally forgiven because you've rebalanced. I mean, sin in Yom Kippur and in Judaism generally is becoming out of balance on the left side versus the right side. Too much kavura, not enough chesed. Too much bina, intelligence, not enough wisdom. Too much power, not enough compassion. And too much emotion, not enough principles. And all of the combinations of the left and the right side. That's sin. So by the time we're in Ne'ilah, you're totally one. You're totally rebalanced. You've totally returned to Shuvah, which means return. You've totally returned to balance. Then you say, Adonai, Hu HaElohim, Tiferet. He is our power, our Gevura, our coalescence. Elohim is both power and coalescence. The Gevura is 7 times, 1 for each of the 7 lower Sfirot. Now, as I've also mentioned earlier in the course, all of these lower 7 that come out of Bina, the flow comes from the unknowable source as a fast-flowing stream called wisdom, and then into a sea called Bina, according to the Zohar. And out of the sea comes 7 streams, 7 channels. And that represents these 7. Adonai Hu Elohim. So you could do it as you say that each time, focusing on Chesed, to Gevura, to Tiferet, to Netzach, to Hod, to Yesod, to Malchut, or the other way around. Some Kabbalists like to start at the bottom and go up higher and higher and higher until they reach total compassion and kindness and goodness. You can do it either way. But generally, the 7s are coming down. What are the 7s? The 7s, starting with Sukkot, 7 days of Sukkot. Each one is a focus on a different sphera, the day of a different sphera. There's the tradition to tell stories in each day. The first one is stories about Abraham, and then Isaac, and then Jacob, and then Moses, and then Aaron, and then Joseph, and then King David or Rachel, and those happen to be the symbols of the forefathers related to. Do they have here? No, I don't have that page here, unfortunately, but you have it in your handout from last week. So the sevens are very important Kabbalistically, and that they have no meaning other than that, of the 7 days of the holiday. That the idea of that's totally Kabbalistic. It's the day of Abraham. Abraham is a symbol of Chesed. So it's the day of Chesed is the first day. And the second day is a day to dwell on Gevurah. The third day on your power and the coalescence in your family, and how you can, in the coming year, receive stronger coalescence. Let's bring us even closer together, something to talk about at dinner that night. You see all of the avenues for educating kids, even at young age, in this idea of receiving, without getting in the complexity of the names and the seven. But each day is a focus for teaching and for self-meditation and self-analysis on each of these seven lower sfirot. So Tiferet, holiness, harmony, becomes the third day. Netzach is the fourth day. The fifth day is Hod. The sixth day is Yesod. The seventh is Malchut. And of course, the eighth day is Shemini Atzeret, a day of welcoming, of celebrating water. A day that historically was a day of sobering up, because Sukkot was the holiday of the grape harvest, and what did people do? They got totally plastered for 7 days, and so they added an eighth day historically in order to sober up. And Simchas Torah has become a Hasidic tradition to get totally drunk on Simchas Torah. It's part of that sense of being so perfectly balanced. And there's another way to receive the flow and feel the joy of receiving the flow. Okay, so that's a taste of how Jewish prayer can be interpreted Kabbalistically. The basic benediction we say all day long, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbos, or likboa mezuzah, or whatever the prayer is. And there's dozens and dozens of them. And the ideal in the Hasidic Kabbalistic school or the school of Kabbalah is to try to maintain gratitude and awareness of God throughout the day. And the blessings certainly help that. What does it mean, though, Kabbalistically? Blessed are you, Baruch atah Bina, the emanator into the world, because Bina is the well, is the seed of gestation, the lower seven sfirot. So it's a remembrance of that. Blessed are you Adonai Eloheinu, which is Bina. King of the world, emanator into the world, is Melech in the Zohar. Whenever the word Melech is used, it's used with one of the sources of emanation, either Keter, the unknowable source, or Bina can also be called Melech in certain passages in the Zohar, because it is a sea. Wisdom gestates and it emanates out the lower seven. And Tiferet is the third. The holy king is usually how the Zohar refers to Tiferet. So, emanator, blessed are you, Bina, emanator of the world or into the world, Asher Kedeshanu, that has made us sanctified, has made us holy. In other words, that has made us capable of receiving Tiferet through our Malchut within ourselves and feeling holy, and commanded us to. So if you think about all that as you say the blessing over the candles at the start of any holiday, and you wave 3 times as you rise up through the 4 worlds, that's Kabbalah. That's experiencing Kabbalah. So the third prayer I want to touch upon here is the Aleinu. The Aleinu comes in every service towards the end, right? Aleinu l'shabeach. It's our obligation to praise the Master of all. Well, the Master of all, Hakol, is another name for Yesod. It's called either Yesod or Hakol. And the all, because everything flows into it. It's you know where the names come from? That comes from Chronicles. And the Kabbalists took it from Chronicles, and then they placed this into the Torah service, where we say, L'cha Adonai ha-gedula ha-gedula v'ha-gavura v'ha-tiferet v'ha-netzach v'ha-hod ki kol, for everything. So it became a name for Yesod, is in the Malchut. So that's where those 10 names, those 7 names for the lower Sefirot come from. Okay. So to go back to the Aleinu, it's upon us to praise. It's upon us to praise because by praising, we open up the gates of flow into the world. We open up our ability to flow as Adonai, with an A, as a Lord of the physical world. But we're opening up to flow into us the potencies of God. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol. L'teit gedula. The gedula of a gavura. Gedula is an alternate name of chesed, of compassion, of loving kindness, of altruism, in all of the meanings of chesed. It's also called gedula, to give unselfishness to the creator of the beginning. Bereshit, code name, an alternate name for wisdom, for chokhmah, the beginning. Bereshit bara Elohim, through wisdom was created Elohim, is how the Zohar translates that. Yotzei Bereshit. Then we could do a whole class on this, which I have done in the past on the Aleinu. So I just want to skip through to some of the significant parts. First of all, after this introduction, we do the strange thing of bowing down, right? Aleinu l'shabeach. And then we say, V'anachnu korim, on the beginning of the next page. V'anachnu korim. U'mishtachavim u'modim. We bend the knee and we bend over and we thank. Well, we're not bowing down to God. We're bowing in order to receive the flow back into us. We're thanking God to stimulate our own hoda'ah, our own sfira of hod. Then it continues down here. Whoops, let's skip a page here. Okay. To mention of fixing the world, the takein olam, fixing the world, core concept of Kabbalah, that we have a mission as Jews and as human beings to fix the world. Fixing means making it holy, bringing the world together, bringing balance and harmony into the world, the takein olam. As the kingdom of Shaddai, it's Malchut. As the Malchut. Malchut is Malchut, is Shekhinah, is the ability to feel God's presence. And Shaddai is which Sfira? Remember, Shaddai is Yesod. Right just above it is the all, is life force, the flow of life to fix the world with so all our needs will be fulfilled. Malchut Shaddai. And then we come to the final part, the final line. B'yom hachu yed Adonai echad u'shmo echad. On that day, when the world is perfectly perfected, then Tiferet will be one, and its name will be oneness, one. And one and harmony and peace, they're all meanings of Tiferet, along with holiness. And together they mean holiness. Okay, so my purpose there was to give you an idea of the depth and level that Kabbalah brings to Jewish prayer. And that's a course in and of itself that I've actually taught several times, and I might do that again through the Jewish Study Center, but we try to incorporate that into the Monday night group. So then, I want to stop the share here for a minute and get to see, I can't see everybody while I'm sharing. So, okay. So, holidays we haven't covered. What are some of the other Kabbalistic aspects of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Rosh Hashanah is Kabbalistically the birth time of the world, where the Shefa has been created. It's the birthday of the world. That's what really the meaning of Rosh Hashanah is. So it's a celebration of, in preparation for Yom Kippur, of the flow of the Shefa into the world, of the Kavod into the world, the attributes of God into the world. And a Tashlich service, an important part of that. And, and this is what I pulled up before by mistake when I was talking about the 22S5-c Seder. I think the Tashlich service is, I'll go back out here. Here we go. Can you see that? This is the Tashlich service. And what we do in Farbrengen, when I lead a Tashlich service every year, it's going to a stream and you cast off breadcrumbs or pebbles into a flowing stream and you watch your sins flow away. As you do that, in a Kabbalistic tashlich, you focus this 3 castings, and you think about at each of the 3 levels, the lowest level of Hod, remember, emotions versus principles. What have been my sins in the past year that I need to cast away, where I've been too emotional and not principled enough, or too emotional and not kind enough, or too emotional and not wise enough? See, it's focusing on the left side of the tree because that's the side where the evil inclination resides. It's always pulling us to sin. Then you do the same thing in 3 more meditations. We do this, spend a few minutes on each one, and people can really think. Or if you do your own alone, it's better because you can have as much time as you need or want. So Gevura and Deen, power and coalescence. Where have I not had enough principle in use of my power over others? We all have power over others, whether it's power over siblings, power over spouses, children, employees, work partners, in the community. If you've taken on a leadership role, you have power with that. And that's opportunity to sin. So here's a framework to go through each level. Where have I sinned with regard to insufficient principles, insufficient chesed and altruism, and loving kindness, and insufficient wisdom? Where have I done foolish things? The opposite of wisdom is foolishness. Where have I been foolish in my gevura? Then we move up to Bina, the level of intelligence. Where have I had insufficient principles in my intelligence? Next meditation, where have I had insufficient kindness and altruism? And finally, the hardest one, where have I had insufficient, a shortfall of wisdom in my use of my intelligence, of my understanding of how to do something, know exactly how to proceed. But is it wise to do it? That's another question. So this framework relates to professional ethics, as Richard and I were talking after class last week, about legal ethics, and as well as personal ethics. I mean, all aspects of ethics. It's a whole framework of ethics, a whole philosophy of ethics. Okay. Stop share. I'm back. So that's Tashlich. The Musaf service is particularly meaningful Kabbalistically and totally devoid of meaning without it. It's a whole Kabbalistic framework because we sing or we recite, I should say, lines of from the Torah, the writings, and the prophets that for each of 3 categories, the Malchuyot versus Zichronot verses and Shofrot verses. And what confuses a lot of Kabbalists with regard to that is the Malchuyot is really the verses of like the Aleinu at the highest level, the level of revelation. And the Zichronot are those in the middle of the tree of life, of the Sfirot, and the Shofrot is the experience level. At the bottom, the Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. That's where you actually hear the shofar. If we had time, we'd go through those. You see, they fit very nicely into those three categories with regard to the tree of life. Otherwise, they really have no meaning. Okay, we talked about Sukkot and the waving in the 6 directions, the building of the sukkah. And we talked about the Tu B'Shvat Seder, 4 glasses of wine, and 3 types of fruit to meditate on. And last week we talked about, the first week we talked about the Passover Seder. And in a sense, all of these customs around the holidays relate to those 4 themes as sort of a summary. The experiencing Kabbalah is really experiencing it in those 4 levels, that we are creation partners. Passover is all about becoming a creation partner and experiencing being a creation partner. That we need God, as Abraham Joshua Heschel taught, just as God needs us. We're the arms and legs and the embodiment of God in the world. The whole concept of our role becoming godlike and emanating the Sefirot into the world. And the holiness, Shabbat, the beginning, the Kiddush itself, the Shema is about bringing holiness into ourselves and building a palace of holiness in every holiday, not just Shabbat. Then ethics. Well, ethics, that's all about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the whole month preceding in preparing ourselves, and the Tashlich service. And revelation. Revelation is Shavuos, and that wonderful preparatory period of Pesach, and then 49 days of counting the Omer, of pairing and analyzing ourselves in terms of our ability, not so much on ethics, but in terms of our ability to discover and to be a partner in creation with God. That's what Shavuos is really all about, is the manifestation, the actualization of the goals that we've established in Pesach to make a better world. How are we going to discover how to do that? That comes in Shavuos, after 49 days. Now, Kabbalistic tradition is to stay up all night and study, because receiving new ideas and the excitement from that is how do you attach to God, how you experience God directly. In fact, that is the essence of Kabbalah, experientially, mystically speaking. How do we become one with God? We attach to the flow. We understand that flow of chesed into us, in our giving of charity, in whatever we're doing, dealing with other people, that's an attachment to God. And stop for a moment, do a prayer, connect with God. Same thing with respect to the flow of wisdom, or our concocting new rules to live by, new principles, new value, a new resolution. That's all part of Netzach, all coming from the right side, connecting to that right side and the flow into us. That's experiencing God. So with that, let me bring the lecture to a close and see if anybody has any questions. We covered a lot in this 3rd class.
Is it possible to reinstate the Save Chat facility? I don't know if you're able to do that, but there used to be
you could click on 3 dots in the bottom right, and the whole chat would save.
I'm going to do that right now. So
Thank you very much.
do that. If you can save it onto your own computer by going onto the chat, and in the bottom next to the smiley face of the 3 dots, and that's a menu, and the top item is Save Chat.
That's what I was hoping for, but at the moment it's still only got the smiley face. They've
Right of that, a place to save the chat.
Yeah.
Just online as host, I don't know. You see the 3 dots to the right of the smiley face?
There normally is, but
Move
for
you-
some reason, not tonight.
Hmm.
They must have set it up in a different way, unless I've misremembered the previous lesson and it wasn't available there either. But I made a really silly mistake. I saw the thing right at the top of the handout, and I completely forgot that the handout link was sent to us with the email. And I was taking a picture of it, uploading it to the internet using online character recognition software to translate it back into text, and then it wasn't the right address anyway, because I use a different machine for the handout because this machine's overloaded, so I only use it for Zoom. So I've wasted all that time because I couldn't save the chat. I could have listened to the more concentration on the lesson, but don't want to take up any more of your time because you very kindly tried to do it, but it hasn't worked. But I found the handout anyway. But it would have been nice. But thank you for trying.
Okay. You're welcome. And 1 or 2 questions here is, how do I find the Monday class? And Jerry has been sending out information on that and the link to come on. It's on my own Zoom, not this one. And that's every Monday from 6 to 7:15. And you're all welcome to join us. A number of people did in the past week. And even on the 4th of July, a few people from the class came and joined us. And you'll find you'll be able to follow more and more each week. It's 3 things. We discuss the Parshat of Shavua. We discuss from a Kabbalistic point of view, what does it mean? And we discuss then any prayers that are referenced in that, or prayers that we just feel like talking about. What does it mean, Kabbalistically? And it's much more discussion oriented, the Monday night class, than this has been. This has been more of a lecture. And then 3rd, we study Zohar, which is really, I go in and I will translate it and decode it, and people will add their ideas and their perceptions. What does it mean to them? What alternate interpretations? Someone had a good question here about interpretation. Is there right and wrong interpretations of Kabbalah? That's a really deep question. There are misleading interpretations. Everybody's interpretation of Zohar or of Torah is legitimate. Ethical. God speaks to us, the unknowable source, in different ways. But they're misleading. There are a lot of teachers of Kabbalah that really don't totally understand it themselves. And that has made it more difficult for Kabbalah to become accepted. So,
following up on that, Jay, what I was really asking when I asked that was about interpretations of the connections between words and sifarot. You had said that Hod could be attached to like several different things, and different sages thought it was to one or the other. So what I'm really asking is there any guidance with it? I mean, if there are multiple right answers to what Hod is connected to, are there wrong answers to what Hod is connected to, or is this a wide open game?
No, it's wide open in that sense. There's you can connect any 2 sefirot. There's, in fact, 22 connections in the diagram for 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And the one of the beautiful aspects of the Zohar is the discussion between the companions. There's actually 10 of them that are discussing technically the Parshat Shavua, the weekly portion, but they get into all sorts of tangents and other topics out of that. But in a discussion, as you said, Richard, one may say, well, I think this is really about, in Kabbalistic code, this is really about Hod, and another will say, no, that's true, that's great, but I want to build on that. I think it's about Netzach and Hod, and they'll talk about it in that way. Very indirect, it's very disguised. It's surreptitious writing like nothing else I've ever seen. Surreptitious subversion, subversiveness is what I call the Zohar now.
But if let me just take an example to make sure I'm understanding your answer. If mouth can mean malchut, but mouth could also mean keter, and I can equally argue that when I see reference to mouth, it means bina, then this obviously isn't a mathematical operation. I mean, couldn't I argue anything? There's no limitation to what I'm claiming is Kabbalistic.
Yeah, but the goal is not to create the theology. The goal is to draw down revelation. So whatever has meaning for you, that your revelation is what you're discovering in Torah. Because the Zohar is about Torah. In life, we're discovering things all the time. That's what co-creation is, discovering new solutions to a problem, new science, new universes now with the new Webb telescope. We leap forward in discovery. Well, that's revelation. It's the same word in Hebrew, revelation and discovery. So that is connecting to God, is drawing down that new discovery. And what the Zohar is about is trying to get below the surface, the garments of the Torah, to the true meaning of Torah. True meaning is what it's teaching us about the Sfirot. So to get there is this code language of symbols, the colors, the sun and the moon and the forefathers. And there's a general consensus on most of that. But it's interesting to take a look at a passage of Torah and come up with your own meaning. For instance, in the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, well, that's a story to Kabbalists, and which is assumed in the Zohar, that you know that this is really talking about, that doesn't have to explain it, that Abraham is chesed, trying to sacrifice Isaac, Gevurah, because of the fear that perfect goodness, kindness of chesed would have over the potential for evil that's connected with this offspring out of chesed called Isaac, called Gevurah, called power. And suddenly the story makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of other ways you could read that. And they're going towards Hamakom. Hamakom is Tiferet, they're going to balance and holiness. But Makom could also be Keter, the source itself. They're going towards the unknowable source. So the simple biblical story like that lends so much depth of interpretation and thereby revelation, thereby discovery. What does it mean to us? What does it mean to me personally? Then you feel excited when you come up with a revelation, and that is the whole part of it. The feeling of excitement and desire to want to do another parsha. Any other questions from all this? One thing we didn't really talk about is some of the other sevens. Sarah, yes, I see your hand. Everybody, if you want to
Yeah,
rate
I was just curious. In the
reactions, you can.
in the very beginning, you were talking about.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And my hand is up. You just
No.
can't see it because my light.
That's
not enough contrast. So in the very beginning, you talked about getting a new soul at Ne'ilah, which is lovely. And how does that compare to, Elohai Neshama that we say every day?
in the Tatabi, that is the soul.
Yeah.
Tiferet, the soul that you have given me, it is pure. Well, yeah, one way to read that is you get a new soul every day. The Kabbalah defines a tripartite soul. 3 parts to the soul. It comes out of Maimonides, actually, in Jewish philosophy. But it becomes particularly
kind of shocked.
And that prayer is talking about the neshama, which is the highest level of soul. Neshama Sinatata bi Tehorahi. It's the highest level of soul. That soul is associated with Chochmah and Bina, with wisdom and understanding. That is part of God within us. Second level of soul is called Ruach, spirit, wind. That is the 7 central sefirot. And the lowest tripartite part of the soul, all parts of the same soul, is the soul of life, of nefesh. So, to a Kabbalist, the soul are all parts of us that are receptors to the sefirot. That's how we can receive the sefirot. That's where the sefirot are found, or in our various parts of the soul. So that's too complicated to get into in this introductory class, but I just did. So, yeah. So thanks for asking that question, Sarah. That's good. We talked about it further on Monday. Good question.
I'll get there eventually.
But and the angels become connected to the soul because the angels are delivery. They're like the channels themselves. They're delivery vessels, vehicles of the different potencies of the sefirot, with Michael or Michael being Chesed, and Gabriel, like the name Gevura, is Gevura, and so forth down through the sefirot and the names of angels. Archaeology comes into this. Okay. Anything else? If not, I'll bring the class to a close. Feel free to email me with any questions that occur to you. And I hope to, and if you're interested in coming to the class, give me a heads up ahead of time if you think of it, or just show up on Monday. And Jerry will send around the link to the Monday class.
I think some
I
people
put another couple of
questions
questions in there, but I don't want to dominate anything of things. If you see them, I wouldn't mind if we talked about them some other time.
It's about the shofar and notes or music. Various questions in there.
Yeah, I sometimes blow shofar and shul. I'm about and I just wondered about the shofar note. And then actually more important to me is the last question I wrote, because I think I understand what you're trying to say, but I'm not sure. And that is whether the meditative connection of Kabbalah is that you focus on the different Sephirot topics in the same manner that in TM, in Transcendental Meditation, they focus on a particular sound. It sounds like it's not a conservative, constructive experience of interpretation, but rather a meditative experience that isn't bound to being rational. And that's, I'm just trying to see if I'm on a right trail that way. Somebody's,
Yeah.
yeah, my computer did this last time too.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there must be something wrong in my connections here. That's me.
Yeah, you might want to keep it on. Yeah. Okay, so you might want to keep it on mute then, or it might be fixed now that you turned it off for a moment. Yeah. Well, that's a great question, Richard. But there are many different types of Kabbalistic meditation, and Abulafia, a generation before the generation of the Zohar in the mid 13th century, developed all sorts of Kabbalistic meditation techniques. One is to focus on it's all around feeling the flow of God coming into us, okay? And what can facilitate total concentration on God flowing in. That could be on individual specific sfirot, or it could be on hearing the sound of the shofar to answer your question, and as a meditation, and feeling the flow of each sfira coming in through your ears. It could be on the tastings, the ceremonial tastings on Shabbat, and on sharing challah, and on the wine, and passing the wine around, and feeling the power of the wine coming into you, on tasting the fruits, Tu B'Shvat, the three kinds of fruits, and in some years we taste a different type of fruit in each category for each of the 10 sfirot, and feel that taste coming in, feel the flow coming in. And on Pesach, it's just wonderful holiday with the ceremonial tastings. They're in there for a reason, not just because it's a commandment that you have to have matzah on at the Seder. So achilat matzah is the commandment, but the matzah is chokhmah, and it's bina that's been incomplete without the chokhmah. And so as we eat the matzah, we're celebrating the left side. You can feel and encourage everyone to close their eyes and focus on that flow of bina coming in. You do it for 10 minutes, or for 2 minutes, or 30 seconds. But that's, and the same thing with the maror, with the charosis, with all of the ceremonial eating, the karpas in the beginning, they all relate to left side sfirot. And then another Kabbalistic meditation technique is focusing on a candle. And if I had a whiteboard, I'd draw a candle, and you can imagine the outer aura is the neshama, and the yellow part of the flame is the ruach, and the inner core is the nefesh. The three parts of the soul are in that flame, and you can focus on different aspects of that and feel the flow. Lighting the candles relates to that. Wonderful meditative technique of you feel the heat, and you feel the light and the flow coming in. That's why candles became so important in Judaism by the Kabbalists, probably as a focus of meditation to bring in the Sabbath. You see how in losing Kabbalah, we lost the meaning of almost everything we did. That's the theme of tonight. Almost everything we do in Judaism, including even putting a mezuzah on the doorpost of our house, and why it's on the right. We touch with the right hand, bring it to our mouth. We're receiving it, bringing it in. What are we receiving? The right arm is the arm of chesed, and you're bringing in chesed as we come into the home for shalom bayit, for loving kindness in the home. And as we go out, you're accessing and drawing in Gevura, because you're going out into the cruel and dangerous world. You need your Gevura, you need your strength, you need your coalescence. So that's another ritual that's so meaningful, going in and out of any room where there's a mezuzah. Remind you, I need chesed coming in, and you're drawing it in, and your gevura going out. So there are a number of meditative aspects to this. There's so many opportunities to discover your own, what's meaningful for you, to apply this. It's very different, but can be adapted to. And Alat Chaim, the approach to meditation is transcendental meditation, basically. Kabbalistic meditation is different. It's a different orientation.
There is a whiteboard facility in this Zoom. I'm not sure how to get it. It might be in the apps, but they added it in the last couple of months. I've seen some people use it, but I don't know how they do it. But it might be useful, might come in useful. Someone's also written a question about the Shema, the small still voice, and the Messiah. Leslie Weinstein at 12:32 a.m.
Yeah, Leslie, are you still here? Yeah, Leslie's still here. Do you want to re-ask that question? It sounds like a really good one. I did notice that quickly perusing through. There she is.
So when you were talking about the Shema, listen, my hyperlink went to Elijah the prophet with the big scene on Mount Carmel and where God was in the still small voice. And that Elijah, who we welcome on Shabbat, on Pesach and at a bris, is going to hearken the Messiah and do the Kabbalist link, listen, Shema, with the still small voice, or is that just my own personal interpretation?
Oh, I love that. That's a very Kabbalistic and very meaningful interpretation. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. The Shema, still small voice. He's hearing something. That's Shema. And Elijah is the forebearer of, or the usher of the Messianic age. In the age when everything is perfect.
And my other thought about Elijah is he's a zealot. You know, he has a lot of gevura, and when he goes off in his chariot, it's as if he's never died. And I'm wondering, my own interpretation is, we the people down here on earth, as we're repairing the world, Elijah is also making teshuvah for his zealousness. And when Elijah makes teshuvah and gets in balance, and we're perhaps the energy to assist Elijah to become more in balance, then the Messiah will come.
Yeah, if all of us can control our anger and our zealousness, which has a Yetzer Hara aspect to it. It's a beautiful aspect of the Elijah story, of understanding the Yetzer Hara through that. And he gets himself in a lot of trouble. That could be a part of a theme, a message, a revelation from Elijah, that we need to be able to fully control our Yetzer Hara. That means fully unify the left and the right side in perfect tiferet, perfect holiness and oneness. Then the Messiah will come. Then we'll be in the Messianic age of perfection, of completeness, of oneness. Yeah. Thanks. That's a great question. Anyone else have anything? Barbara, do you have any questions?
Someone's put a question about the number 9 or 10 and the shofar note.
Oh, wait. Yeah, this reminds me of something I wanted to say about the shofar. The shofar is a wonderful meditation opportunity, and the actual blowing of the shofar is totally Kabbalistic in terms of what notes you play when and how. And you have the takiya, the long blast, and the teruah, and if the blower does it right Kabbalistically, it should be 7 toots. Toot, 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 toot. And the same thing with the structure of each blowing session between the Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofrot verses, for instance. There's no set rule of how you individually take that and then lay it on to the tree of life in terms of you're receiving the various sfirot. You can do it in any number of ways, but I like to come from the top and just focus each blast on a different sphira, or each set of blasts. So there's 9 of them, right, Richard? In each.
Actually, I was teaching about Tekiah class with a book from at Har Shalom some years ago, and the book suggested that there were 2 ways of doing teruah, and neither of them were 7. It said there was some dispute between whether it's or whether it's 9 or 10.
Yeah, I remember reading that once. Yeah,
and I wondered, and if it's not resolved in whoever wrote that book out of New York in the 1960s, and one of the only books I've seen on technique, or it could be wrong, or it could be somebody else's interpretation, or, but the 9 just seemed the 9 or 10 seems to be curious when I try to overlay it on the Sifarot.
No,
and it sounds suspicious.
They're both Kabbalistic, and as you can assume, and as you'll learn, there's lots of different schools of Kabbalah and Kabbalists. Every Kabbalist has their own interpretation, but the blower should do 9 or 10, and if it's 9, then it'd be nice to share it to the congregation of Kabbalists. If you're in a Kabbalistic congregation, my custom is to do the 9 blows, and then people know that the reason for that is, well, Keter we can't know, so we start with Chochmah, and that's 9, and 10 is including all of them. So one Kabbalist will say, oh, you should include every one because there's 10 Sfirot, and Sefer Yetzirah says there's 10, not 9, not 11. There's 10 channels, which is from the 2nd century. And then someone else will say, what? No, we can't know the Ein Sof, the infinite, so therefore we should have 9.
And I wondered where that fit, because actually if you do the 10 and you say the 10 is Keter, then that, because the last one, some say you make more plaintive. So it's so if you're climbing up the Sifarot, I'm making this up as I go along, so don't take this as authority. All I know is that the book said some say 9, some say 10. And if it's 10, it's ta. So, boy, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I have no idea why. The book doesn't say why. The book's intended for 13-year-olds.
Not being a blower myself, I always wondered how do you count to 10? And in our congregation, all the blowers are amateurs, and they never come up with 9 or 10.
We had that problem too, and we had somebody blowing the notes upside down, so we created a class. So
Yeah.
that at least people wouldn't blow the notes upside down.
And to me, it's most meaningful not to go up, but to come down. So, but if you don't know if he's going to do 9 or 10, you could come from the bottom up, and you're reaching towards the unknowable source, which is beautiful.
Especially if the 10th is keter.
Yeah.
And
If
if 10th is plaintive, is I'm not there. Let me in.
Yeah, that's interpretation. Or coming down, and the 10th is then the Shekhinah, and that's somewhat plaintive. It has connotations of the exile, and of particularly in Lecha Dodi, the idea of the Shekhinah being in exile all week, but with us on Shabbat. There's a plaintiveness of that too. I think that's where that idea of the plaintiveness comes from, coming down from all 10, and then landing with the Shekhinah.
And is the Shivarim then with its what? Is the Shivarim the threes?
3 of them. That's in 3. So you're going up, 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 each world. So you're rising up and up, just like in the beginning of the Amida, or the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. You lift yourself, lift yourself, lift yourself a little bit. It was very mystical, even before Kabbalah. That passage from Isaiah. There's a lot of Kabbalah literature on the Kedusha.
Interesting.
Kadosh, Kadosh, Adonai Tzebaot. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Hosts of Netzach and Hod. That's a very beautiful, Kabbalistically interpreted prayer.
Thanks for the class.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. And again, I hope to see you all on Mondays, and you can buy my books on Amazon, or from me if you send a note and a check, then I'll send you copies of the books.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.